Okay, so now we're going to start solving one-step equations. So we have to get the steps down first. So the whole point is that we are trying to get the variable alone. So whatever the variable is, we're trying to get it alone. So first thing is we draw the river. So you probably heard about that from last year. Then after we draw the river, we identify the operation that is currently happening. Once we do that, then we do the opposite operation. So for instance, if the original operation in step 2 was addition, then we would do subtraction. If it's subtraction, we would do addition. If it's multiplication, then we do division. If it's division, we do multiplication. Okay, so we always do the opposite operation. So, and remember what we do to one side, we must do to the other side. Okay, so what we do to one side of the river, we have to do one side of the river, must do to the other side. And our last step is to simplify if needed. Okay, so those are the steps, but let's get solving. Okay, so looking at example 1. So we said the first thing we do is draw the river, and then we identify what operation is happening. This is addition, so the opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 5, not just on this side, but also on this side. And then 5 minus 5 cancels. We get x equals, and then 13 minus 5 is 7. So what's really important is that you're showing your work the way that I'm showing you, because we're going to eventually get to problems that look like this. We're going to get to problems that eventually look like that. And if you're not showing your work in the basics, then it's just not going to work. Once you get up to the harder part, you're going to start losing yourself. So make sure exactly how I write it is how you write it. Okay. So do you think anything changes looking at example 2 now that we have fractions? The only difference is that, okay, maybe I'll have to use the calculator. Okay. So nothing really changes. We draw the river. We identify that addition's happening. So the opposite of addition is to subtract 4/5. We subtract 4/5 because what we do to the one side, we do to the other. Those 4/5 cancel. We get x equals, what's 4 minus 4/5? If you need to, pause and do that in your calculator right now. Okay. When you do that, you should get 3 1/5. 3 1/5. All right, I want you to try example 3 on your own. So pause right now and try example 3 all on your own. Watch your signs. All right, so it was adding 2.26, so we should be subtracting 2.26 on each side. And we get x equals, this is negative 8.1 minus 2.26. So we really add them up. We get 6, 3, 10, negative 10.36. All right, looking at example 4, again, first step, draw the river. Identify the operation. This is subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is adding. What we do to one side, we do to the other. The 3's cancel. We're left with x equals, what's negative 4 plus 3? Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. Okay, so let's do it one more time. We draw the river. We identify the operation as subtraction, so we do the opposite of that, and we add 4.5. Add 4.5. Those cancel. We're left with x equals 2 plus 4.5 is 6.5. All right, I want you to pause and try example 6. All right, so it was subtraction, so we do the opposite of subtraction. We add 2.5. Negative 3.5 minus 2.5 is negative 1. Okay. Looking at example 7, this one's a little tricky. Okay. So we have to figure out what is implied between this 4 and the x. There's something implied between them, and it's multiplication. So multiplication is implied between the 4 and the 6. on the x, sorry. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Well, the opposite of multiplication is division. Here's the thing, we're not gonna write it using the division bar like that, okay? We don't write it that way. We write it using a fraction bar. So I'm gonna write it as dividing by 4. Dividing by 4. Whatever is in front of the x, that's what you divide by. Whether it's a negative, a decimal, a fraction, it doesn't matter. That's what you divide by. Our 4's cancel. We're left with x equals, and then negative 32 divided by 4 is negative 8. All right, I want you to try example 8 on your own. Try example 8 on your own. All right, so we know in between the negative 1/4 and the x is multiplication. So the opposite of that is the divide. And we divide by whatever it is in front of the x. So it's a negative 1/4. So our negative 1/4 cancel. Our x comes down. And do that in the calculator. What's negative 20 divided by negative 1/4? Guys, be really careful when you type that in. Make sure you use the division bar. You put in the fraction. When you do that, it should give you 80. Should give you 80. All right, last one we're gonna do together. Okay, so we gotta draw the river. Draw the river. What? This bar. That bar is a fraction bar, right? And we said the fraction bar means division. But we don't write it using the division bar. That's why we use the fraction. So what's the opposite of dividing? Well, we know the opposite of dividing is to multiply. But we're not going to write it with the x. We're not going to write it with the x. We're going to write it using the dot. We're going to write it using the dot. So we're going to write dot, and then whatever's in the denominator, dot 3. When we do the left side, we have to do the right side, dot 3. Our 3's cancel. It's really important that when you write it to the left, you put it right next to the x, okay? Then we're left with x equals whatever 10 times 3 is, which is 30. All right, I want you to try example 10. Try example 10 right now. All right, so you should have multiplied by not just the 4, but a negative 4. When you multiplied the other side by negative 4, you should have gotten 20, okay? So don't worry, we'll get into the habit of doing a lot of this practice later and putting your, showing the right work, but just try to be as aware of showing all the work as you possibly can.